Hi, I'm Rachel and welcome to Auxhart Gardening. Today I'm talking to you, first-time gardener who's just getting started or thinking about getting started. I have a few things that I want to share with you that I really wish I had known when I set out on my gardening journey. All right, the first thing I want to share with you is that you should definitely make a plan, but you should realize that things are definitely not all going to go according to that plan. There's always things, even for the most experienced gardeners, that come up. There's changes in the weather, and there are pests, and as a first-time gardener, you're still figuring out how everything works. And if things don't go according to plan, which they won't, it's gonna be okay. I like to take the approach that you should give yourself the grace and space to fail, because you will. And you can plan as much as you like, and things still won't go according to plan. For example, this year I planted radishes for the very first time. And I gave them the right amount of time that the seed packet said they needed, with the right amount of weather, and they still didn't grow. Like, they grew, but they never made roots. And then they started bolting before I ever got to harvest a radish. And so that's one of those things that in your first year, it's probably going to happen. So just start out with the expectation that while you should have a plan, that plan is not going to play out exactly as you think it will. The second thing is that gardening takes time. It takes a lot of time. With gardening, you're really tempted to start out with this is what I'm gonna grow for the summer, and then you go buy your plants from the store, and that's all you're thinking about. But I think to be really successful with gardening, you have to have more of a 5-year plan, especially if your goal is to get into things like sustainability, such as seed saving and composting and building your soil. All of these things happen over a really long period of time. So if you're just starting out gardening, I need you to realize that this is a long-term commitment. And this first year, even if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, like we talked about, you have to realize that there's this longer time period that you're looking at. And you do have the time to correct those mistakes and to build on what you've done in previous years. The third thing is that you don't have to do all the things in your first year. Like I said, gardening is a really long-term process. You will have all the time in the world to try all the things. But your first year, I really recommend keeping it simple, because it's so easy to get carried away in I want to grow all the tomatoes, and then I want to can them and preserve them, and I want to save the seeds. And it's okay to have these really big dreams, but I think it's safer and probably better for your morale if you just start small, because these little successes over time, especially right now in the beginning, are what's going to help fuel your motivation to keep going in the garden. I know from experience that starting too big and then seeing a lot of things fail is really, really hard to come back from. And I've seen people go through this and just think that they have a black thumb, that they can't grow anything, and that is not true. I know that you can grow food. You just have to give yourself the right amount to start with. Don't bite off more than you can chew, as they say. Number 4, experience is the best teacher. And this is something that I would really have to drive home for myself, because I'm the type that wants to just research everything and make sure that I can do it perfectly on my first try. And that's not how it goes. You can do all the research you want, and you're still not going to learn as much as you will by actually doing the thing, right? So even though there's so much advice out there from so many gardeners in so many climates, the only way that you're gonna learn what works for you and your climate and your space is by trying it, right? The only way that you can really figure it out is by trying it for yourself and failing a few times. And again, failing, it's going to happen, and it's okay, and it doesn't mean that you're not a good gardener. Keep that in mind. And it's also important to realize that there is no one right way to do things. Person A does things this way and it works really well for them, and person B, maybe even in the same climate, does things a different way and it also still works really well for them. So I really encourage you to, over time, experiment with these different methods. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to follow advice, but just realize that you don't have to do things one way and that's like the magical right way to do things. There's a right way for you to do things, and maybe there's multiple right ways for you to do things in your situation. So just give yourself the space to try out all of those things and realize that it's gonna take the experience to figure it out. So the fourth thing is that you should plan for insects, both the good ones and the bad ones. In my first year, I just sprayed everything. I was so afraid of insects getting to my plants. I bought this really heavy duty pesticide and I just like covered everything in it. And I realize now that that was actually terrible for my garden long term, because it not only killed all the bad insects, it killed all the good ones. And all the pollinators didn't really want to be around, and it was just a bad time. So when you're planning for insects, there are two things you can do. The first one is plan for the pollinators, for the good ones, right? You want to make sure that you have enough flowers around your garden for the pollinators. And then the other side of that, the second thing is to plan for the pests. You know, plant a little extra or plant something that they'd rather eat other than your plants. Just don't go willy-nilly killing all the pests, because you're going to end up killing all of the good insects in the process, and that really puts things out of balance, and that makes for a really unhealthy garden in the long term. And then the last thing I'm going to say is don't get caught up in shiny object syndrome. Like when you go to the store, especially this time of year, there are like so many cool little garden gadgets that you can get, and it can be easy to think that you need all of these things. But in reality, you just need a few really solid tools to work in the garden. The ones that I would say definitely get and invest in getting good ones would be garden gloves, a really solid trowel, and some clippers for pruning or harvesting your food. I think beyond that, everything is kind of optional, and it really depends on how big your garden is going to be, what kind of tools you're going to need. But just realize that to be a good gardener, you don't have to buy all this stuff. I promise you. So, new gardeners, I know you can do it. I'm here cheering you on. I'm kind of right there with you because I'm only in my second year of gardening here. But please like and subscribe if you have any questions for me. It is my ultimate goal to help you out. So please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to help you out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Until then, happy gardening.